thought I was asleep. But through the crack in my window blinds, I watched him crouch in the backyard, silent, trembling, peeling his own skin off like clothing, revealing something underneath that was still breathing. I've had a few weird roommates, but Alex was different. At first glance, he was normal, quiet, neat, polite. He paid rent on time and mostly kept to himself. But there were little things. He never ate in front of me. His door was always locked, even when he was inside. He never used the bathroom when I was home, and I never saw him sleep. Just disappear into his room around midnight and reappear the next morning, fully dressed and alert. I chalked it up to him being private, maybe a little socially anxious. That was fine. Rent in LA was brutal, and as long as he didn't start sacrificing goats in the kitchen, I could deal. But then the backyard thing happened. It was about 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. I couldn't sleep, so I sat in the dark playing some random video on mute. The window next to my bed looked out into the yard, and the blinds didn't close all the way. That's when I saw movement. At first, I thought it was an animal, something hunched and twitching beneath the moonlight. But it moved like a person, jerky, deliberate. I crept closer to the window. It was Alex. He was kneeling in the grass, shirtless, back facing me. His spine was arched unnaturally, shoulder blades twitching under the skin. He dragged his nails across his own back, slowly, and I saw skin peel up, like wet paper. He wasn't cutting himself. He was removing himself, layer by layer like a snake. Long strips, silent and smooth, falling away to the grass. But what emerged wasn't blood or muscle. It was something gray, wrinkled, damp, alive. I don't even know how to describe it properly. The flesh underneath looked almost rubbery, and it pulsed in places, like it breathed. I stumbled back and tripped over my nightstand. It made a sharp bang, and I knew he must have heard it. But when I looked again, the backyard was empty. No Alex, no pile of skin, just grass swaying gently under the moonlight. The next morning, he was in the kitchen, fully dressed, sipping coffee like nothing happened. "Sleep okay?" he asked. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. That day I checked the backyard. Nothing. Not even a stray thread of cloth or scrap of flesh. But I swear the patch of grass where he'd crouched looked darker, damper, like it had never dried. I started avoiding him after that. I waited for him to leave before showering. Ate in my room. Slept with my door locked, though I knew that wouldn't matter. But the worst part wasn't what I saw. It was what I started to hear. At night, from his room, muffled movements. What slapping sounds. The faint creak of his floorboards shifting under something heavy. Once I passed by his door and thought I heard whispering. Except it wasn't a voice. It was multiple voices, layered, overlapping, saying the same thing again and again. Don't look, don't look, don't look. I considered leaving, packing my bags and vanishing without explanation. But that's the thing, I couldn't. Every time I tried to book a hotel, my card would decline. My phone kept glitching out when I typed addresses. One night, I tried to leave and found all 4 tires slashed. No footprints on the pavement, just deep cuts in the rubber. Surgical. I confronted him once, weakly, casually. I asked why he was always up so late. He looked at me and said, "I don't sleep well in this skin." That was it. No smile, no laugh, just that flat, hollow tone like it was true. The last night I saw him, he left his door open. Not wide, just a sliver, like an invitation. Inside, the light was off, but I could see movement. Something shifting in the dark. A gray limb, then 2, unfolding, uncurling. Too many joints. I closed my door, locked it, and sat in bed, staring at the handle, praying it wouldn't turn. In the morning, he was gone, vanished. His room empty, closet bare. No note, no trace of him ever existing, except one thing. In the center of his floor was a pile of skin, folded neatly, like pajamas, and on top of it, my spare key. He showed up at the front door barefoot, shivering and smiling, even though we'd buried him 2 days earlier. My brother, Caleb, went missing during a solo hiking trip in the Rockies. He was always a loner, always chasing the most isolated trails. When he didn't come back after 3 days, we called search and rescue. They found a blood-stained jacket, a torn boot, and signs of a struggle near a steep drop. We were told to prepare for the worst. They never found his body. The funeral was closed casket. My mom sobbed like something had been ripped out of her. I stood at the podium and said words I barely remembered, too shocked to grieve properly. Then, 3 days later, he knocked on our front door. No warning, no call, just a knock. He was barefoot, his clothes soaked and shredded, but his skin was flawless. No wounds, no bruises, not even a scratch. He looked pale and calm, like he'd just woken from a nap. He smiled and said, "I got turned around, but I'm okay now." The exact same line, word for word, over and over. I hugged him. So did Mom. We were too stunned to question it, but something felt wrong, off in a way I couldn't quite place. His eyes were dull, like he was watching instead of seeing. He barely blinked, barely breathed. That night at dinner, he sat at the table like a statue. He didn't touch his food, just smiled and said, "I got turned around, but I'm okay now." I asked if he remembered what happened. He stared at me. "I got turned around, but I'm okay now." It wasn't just the repetition, it was the way he said it. Same pitch, same rhythm, like a recording. Later, I caught him in the hallway staring into the mirror, not checking his hair, not admiring himself, staring. I watched him for almost 5 minutes. He didn't move once. I finally whispered, "Caleb?" He turned to me slowly and said, "I got turned around, but I'm okay now." I started to panic. The next day, I called the coroner. I asked if we were sure the body in that casket was unidentifiable. He said yes, and that DNA was inconclusive due to decomposition. So, maybe it wasn't him. But the more I watched Caleb, the more convinced I became it was him. Or at least, it had been. He knew things only Caleb would know. The nickname Mom used when he was sick. The time I broke my wrist in 8th grade and blamed the neighbor's dog. He knew it all. But he didn't feel like him. He never laughed, never cried, never got tired. Sometimes I'd hear him walking in circles at night, perfect, slow circles, like he was practicing something. On the 6th night, I woke up to him standing in my doorway. He was smiling. Not a warm smile. Not a relieved, happy to be home smile. It was wide, strained, full. I didn't say anything. I just stared. My heart was thudding so loud I thought he'd hear it. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but nothing came out. Just a soft click like a tongue hitting teeth. Then he turned and walked away. The next morning I told Mom we had to talk. She shut it down. "Don't do this," she whispered. "I got my son back. I'm not losing him again." But that night I saw her crying in the kitchen. She didn't know I was watching. She said under her breath, "That's not him. That's not my Caleb." The final straw came 2 days later. I found Caleb sitting in the garage, alone in the dark. He was humming something tuneless, quiet. In front of him was a notebook open to a single page. One sentence repeated dozens of times. "I got turned around, but I'm okay now." Except the last line had changed. Read, "He got turned around and now I'm here." I stepped back. The floor creaked. He stopped humming. And without turning around, he said, "You should go back to bed." I ran. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, and then he was gone. No note, no sign of forced entry, just gone. But he left something behind. In the bathroom mirror, scrawled in condensation, even though no one had showered that morning. He got turned around. We never saw Caleb again. But sometimes, late at night, I'll get calls from a blocked number. And when I answer, there's a pause. Then a familiar voice says, "I got turned around, but I'm okay now." The signal came during the thunder. A voice on the old radio, calm and mechanical, listing names from my street and the organs they'd been assigned. It started during the kind of storm that shakes your whole house. You know the kind, rattling windows, blinking lights, and thunder that sounds like it's cracking your bones. My power had gone out, so I lit some candles and rummaged through the hall closet for my grandpa's old battery radio. He was a shortwave hobbyist, always scanning obscure frequencies, listening for weather reports, pirate stations, even UFO chatter, he'd joke. I turned the dial slowly, the static swelling and dropping like a tide. At first, it was just the usual crackling void. Then I heard it, a click, then a long pause, then a voice, not quite human, too slow, like someone was dragging vowels through gravel. It said, District 7, Organ Verification, Batch 601, Proceeding. I stopped turning the dial. I leaned in. The voice returned, distorted and robotic, like a translator program reading off a checklist. James Renner. Right kidney viable. Clara Renner. Liver pending decay. Milo Renner. Ocular pair approved. My neighbors. The Renner family lived 2 houses down. Their names weren't common, and they were read with such clinical certainty I felt my stomach turn. Then came more. Linda Chin. Pancreas accepted. Jeremy Phelps. Lungs bilateral clear. One by one, every name on our block was listed, first and last, in alphabetical order. Then it said, Unknown resident, 14 Birchmont Lane. Cardiac tissue, incomplete. Subject unsuitable. That was me. It even got my house number right. I slammed the radio off and just stared at it. My heart was pounding like it was trying to escape. The storm outside roared louder, wind pushing against the house like fists. I sat in silence for what felt like forever. Then I turned the radio back on. But now only static. No voice. No signal. I waited all night listening. Nothing. The next morning, the power returned. I called every neighbor whose name I'd heard. No answer. I walked down the block. Knocked on a few doors. Everything looked normal. Cars in driveways, newspapers on porches. But no one came to the door. Not even the Renners, who were always up early walking their beagle. That night, I turned the radio on again. Static. Static. Then click. The voice returned, quieter this time. Extraction successful. 7 of 10. My blood froze. I heard dragging sounds in the background. Wet, organic, like meat being pulled from plastic. Then a new line began. Updated recipient list pending. Await reassignment. I turned it off. For 3 days, the neighborhood was silent. No lawnmowers. No kids. No cars. Just a hollow stillness, like the whole street had exhaled and forgotten to breathe back in. I tried calling the police. Left voicemails. Even drove down to the station. No one there. Empty lot. Doors chained shut. I checked online. No news. No alerts. My neighborhood wasn't even mentioned on the map anymore. By the 5th day, I decided to leave. I packed a duffel, grabbed the radio, and got in my car. As I drove past each house, I looked for movement. Anything. Nothing. But just as I was about to turn onto the highway, I saw it. A van. Matte black. No plates. Parked at the very end of the street, half hidden by trees. A figure stood next to it, tall, thin, almost skeletal under a too tight uniform. The moment I locked eyes with it, the radio in my passenger seat clicked back on by itself. The voice said, Unapproved subject detected. Reclassification in progress. I slammed the gas and didn't stop until I was 2 towns away. I'm writing this from a motel. The radio still works, still talks, but now it doesn't use names. Now it just says numbers. And earlier tonight it said, Subject 601 to 14 reclassified, viable. I smashed it. Didn't matter. Just now I heard another click. Not from the radio, from the motel phone. And the voice on the other end said, Proceed to collection site. She used to greet everyone with a wagging tail. Now, every time my boyfriend enters the room, she growls at a corner he's nowhere near. I've had Daisy since she was a puppy. She's a golden retriever with a heart too big for her body, gentle, affectionate, the kind of dog that would rather lick an intruder than bark at them. Everyone loved her, and she loved everyone back. Until Ethan moved in. We'd been dating a year. Felt right. He was charming, attentive, normal. He'd always gotten along fine with Daisy during visits. A few tail wags, some cautious sniffing. Nothing alarming. But the very first night he stayed over, something changed. We were lying in bed watching a movie when Daisy wandered in. At first, she padded toward me like usual. But halfway across the room, she froze, staring not at Ethan, but at the corner of the bed he wasn't standing near. She let out a low, guttural growl I'd never heard before. Her hackles rose. Then she barked. Sharp, urgent, like she was warning us. At nothing. I laughed it off. Maybe a spider? And tried calling her over. She wouldn't budge. Instead, she backed out of the room. Backward. Still facing that empty corner. That night, she wouldn't sleep in the bedroom. She lay in the hallway whining softly. The next night, same thing. Ethan walked into the room and Daisy began barking again at the same empty spot. Not at him. Never at him. Just near him. Opposite him. It was like she was tracking something invisible. By night 3, I was starting to feel it too. That spot at the corner of the bed always felt wrong. Cold. Not air conditioner cold. Stale. Like a place where sound didn't quite travel right. The kind of cold you feel in your spine before your skin catches on. Sometimes I'd catch Ethan glancing there too, his smile twitching a little, like he'd seen something in the periphery. But when I asked, he just said I was letting Daisy spook me. Then came the night I woke up to Daisy screaming. She wasn't barking. She was shrieking, paws scratching at the hardwood outside the bedroom door, body flung against it again and again like she was trying to break it down. I flipped on the lamp. Ethan jolted up beside me, confused, half asleep. That's when I saw it. The corner. It was darker than the rest of the room. I swear it. Like light was refusing to touch it. And the air, it didn't move. Even as I shook, even as Ethan threw the covers back and ran to open the door for Daisy, that corner stayed utterly still. Like a photograph. Like it wasn't part of the room anymore. Daisy burst in and lunged, teeth bared, not toward Ethan, but toward that corner. She stopped a foot away and barked wildly, first standing straight up, and then turned and placed her body between me and it. Ethan tried to grab her, calm her down, but she snapped, not at him but at the air, at something right behind him. That night I slept on the couch. Daisy curled up under my arm and didn't move until sunrise. The next day Ethan was quiet, distant. He went to work without saying much, and when I texted him to check in, he replied hours later with just a thumbs up emoji. That evening, I came home and found Daisy trembling under the kitchen table. Her food bowl was untouched, and in the bedroom the door was shut. Locked. I knocked. No answer. I called Ethan's phone. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. When I finally pried the door open, the lights were off. The air was freezing, and Ethan was standing in the corner, not facing it, in it, like he'd wedged himself into that wrong space, forehead against the wall, arms limp at his sides. He whispered something under his breath, over and over. I couldn't make it out. I reached for him, but Daisy growled. Snap. And then Ethan turned around. He was smiling, but not with his mouth. His lips stayed flat. His eyes were what smiled, wide, glinting, unnatural. He said, "She sees too much." That's all. Then he walked past me and left. He hasn't come back. I called his work. They said he'd quit a week ago. I checked his apartment, vacant. No forwarding address. His phone's disconnected. Social media wiped. But the worst part? That corner is still wrong. Daisy won't go near it. She watches it sometimes late at night, tail tucked tight, her body tense like a spring. And once, just once, I thought I saw it too, a twitch in the air. A shape that didn't cast a shadow. Something waiting. She's trying to protect me. But I don't think it was ever him that frightened her. I think he let something in. And now it lives in the corner. She always smiled the same way when she waved. Same words. Same rhythm. Same exact tone, every 3 days. I moved into the neighborhood last spring, just trying to get away from city noise. Cheap rent, quiet streets, close to work. It seemed like a good deal. My neighbor, Margaret, was the first person to greet me. An older woman in her late 60s, floral dress, hair perfectly set like she was waiting for a church potluck. Lovely weather today, isn't it? I made cookies earlier. Maybe you'll get a whiff. It was sweet, old-fashioned. I smiled and nodded, thanked her, and went on unpacking. 3 days later, I was walking to my car and heard, "Lovely weather today, isn't it? I made cookies earlier. Maybe you'll get a whiff." Same smile, same floral dress, word for word. It struck me as odd, but maybe she just liked routines. Maybe she didn't recognize me. I waved back and let it go. The third time was harder to ignore. She said the exact same thing. Exact. Same cadence, same inflection. Her head tilted at the same moment. Her eyes did the same blink. Slow, almost mechanical. So I started testing it. Every 3 days, she'd catch me at the fence and say her line like clockwork. If I tried to change the subject, asked her a different question, brought up the news, mentioned a random fact, she'd pause, blink twice, and reset. Like a broken NPC in a video game. She'd smile, then ask again. "Lovely weather today, isn't it? I made cookies earlier. Maybe you'll get a whiff." I began recording it. Not out of paranoia, just curiosity. When I played the clips back, I noticed something disturbing. Not only were the words the same, the audio waveforms were identical, down to the millisecond. Not even professional voice actors could recreate a sentence that perfectly, with zero variation in breath, timing, or tone. It was like I was watching the same video file over and over. Only I wasn't. She was right there, living, breathing. Or she was something right there. By the 5th cycle, I stopped responding. I just observed, record, document. She never broke pattern. Until last week. On her scheduled day, 7:43 a.m., I stood by the window and watched her approach the fence. I pressed record. "Lovely weather today, isn't it? I made cookies earlier. Maybe you'll get a whiff." Same line, same tone, but this time, she didn't walk away. She stood still, hands clasped in front of her, smile locked into place. And she turned her head, slowly, to face me. Not like someone casually noticing a neighbor, like someone acknowledging a surveillance camera. I ducked back from the window instinctively, waited a minute, then peeked again. She was still staring, not moving, not blinking. My phone buzzed. An airdrop request. The name of the device, Margaret_Unit 7. The file, "Do not record me again." I declined, threw my phone onto the couch and backed away. That night, my power flickered. Lights dimmed, then glowed brighter than usual, too white, too clean. And in the hallway mirror, for half a second, I saw her reflection behind me. Except, it wasn't her. It was a face like hers, but smooth, wrong. The mouth didn't move right. The eyes had no depth, like a mannequin trying to mimic skin. She, or it, spoke again 2 days later. But this time, I didn't hear the usual line. I was walking to my car when she stepped out of her garden and said flatly, "You were not cleared to monitor replication protocol." I stopped cold. "What are you?" I whispered. She tilted her head in that same unnerving way, but the smile didn't return. "I am error adjacent now," she said. "You must forget this cycle." Then she walked away. Today's her usual day, 7:43 a.m. She didn't show up. No weather comment. No cookies. But around 8 p.m. someone knocked at my door. When I checked the peephole, no one was there. Just a folded paper taped to the glass. It said, "Your loop has begun." And in the distance, over my neighbor's roof, I saw another Margaret, perfect smile, perfect wave, walking toward a different house. Same voice, same dress. Lovely weather today, isn't it? He stared at me like I was a puzzle made of meat. Then he asked what sadness tastes like, and smiled when I couldn't answer. I met him on a dating app. Nothing unusual, cute enough, polite, well-spoken. His profile said he worked in biotech, loved classic films, and was curious about everything. That last part would stick with me. We had our first date at a little tapas place downtown. He was charming, too charming. He spoke like someone who had read books on human behavior but never quite absorbed it. Every reaction of his felt just a second delayed, like he was watching me for cues then mimicking them back. But I brushed it off. People can be socially awkward, right? On our second date, we met for a walk. It was dusk, the sky streaked in violet and amber. He brought me hot chocolate in a thermos. I sipped and he watched. "Do you think sadness has a flavor?" he asked out of nowhere. I laughed nervously. Bitter? Maybe salty? Like tears? He tilted his head. "Interesting. We've always guessed that." I gave a half smile, waiting for the punchline. He chuckled. "Sorry? I just mean me and my siblings. We're still trying to learn how to blend in better this time." "This time?" He blinked slowly. "Oh, never mind." I made a joke about AI trying to date humans. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, eyes slightly too wide, and said, "Not AI, but I like the comparison." The air suddenly felt colder. That night I couldn't sleep. His words looped in my head. "We're just trying to blend in better this time." What did that mean? The next morning I checked his profile again. It was gone. Not unmatched, deleted. No trace of him. I tried to search his name on Google, LinkedIn, Facebook. Nothing. So I emailed him using the address from our app conversation. It bounced back, invalid domain. But that wasn't the worst part. The next day I was walking home from work. A black SUV was parked across the street from my apartment. Tinted windows, engine off. A figure was sitting inside, not moving. I went up to my place, tried to shake it off, but around midnight I heard a low hum outside, like a power line vibrating too close to my skull. I looked through the blinds. The SUV was still there. The driver's side window was cracked open. I could see an eye watching me through it. No flashlight, no movement, just that eye, unblinking. The hum grew louder. My ears started to ring. Then it all stopped. The vehicle pulled away silently. I didn't sleep. The next afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a small, unmarked device like a voice recorder, and a note. "This is what you sound like when you're afraid. We're learning." I dropped it. My stomach turned. Was this some sick joke? I hadn't told anyone about him. No one. I went to the police. They didn't take me seriously. Said I might have been catfished or targeted for a prank. I even showed them the recorder. They said it looked like a novelty item. I smashed it the moment I got home. I didn't go out for a week. But then the lights in my apartment began flickering. Not all at once, just in patterns. Rhythmic, deliberate, like Morse code I couldn't decode. The thermostat would rise on its own. 73, 76, 81. I'd lower it. Minutes later, it would creep back up. One night, I walked into the kitchen and my TV turned on by itself. A frozen frame of my own face filled the screen, me sleeping. I don't have a camera in my bedroom. I unplugged everything and left the apartment for good. Now, I live across the state under a new name. I change phones every month. I don't use dating apps, but every now and then, I see him. Not directly. Once in a crowd. Once in a hotel lobby mirror. Always out of focus, like he's just slightly wrong for the frame. and I hear his voice sometimes where it doesn't belong. In the wind through the trees, in elevator chimes, in static on the radio. He asked me what sadness tasted like. Now I think I know. It's metal, and glass, and the hum of something waiting to become you. Her voice cracked mid-sentence and something ancient came out. A sound that didn't belong in a human mouth, let alone in a quiet therapist's office. I started therapy after my dad passed away. Grief, insomnia, flashes of panic that came out of nowhere. My regular doctor recommended Dr. Miranda Holtz, a specialist in trauma with a reputation for being gentle but sharp. She worked out of an old Victorian-style office that had been converted into a clinic. Faded rugs, grandfather clock in the waiting room, the kind of place that smelled like old books and hand sanitizer. The first few sessions were fine. She listened well, asked careful questions. Nothing too deep yet. Mostly childhood baseline stuff, sleep patterns, what I remembered about the funeral. But the sixth session was when it happened. I was halfway through describing a recurring dream I'd been having. Something about walking endlessly through a foggy field, never reaching the end, when she stopped me. Not with a word, just a look. Her eyes sort of unfocused, like something inside her went off script. Her lips parted slightly and she started to speak. But it wasn't English. It wasn't any language I'd heard before. It sounded wet, guttural. The syllables dragged like they had weight, like they didn't belong in a throat shaped like ours. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then she blinked, snapped back, and whispered, soft, controlled, "You weren't supposed to hear that." The room went dead quiet. My pulse spiked. What did you just say?" She stared at me. Her face was calm, too calm. Then she smiled and said, "I didn't say anything unusual. You might be experiencing auditory hallucinations. It's not uncommon in trauma patients." She scribbled something in her notebook. I laughed nervously. "No, you said something. It wasn't English. It wasn't anything." Dr. Holt smiled again. "You're safe here. We'll explore that together next session." I left the office shaking. That night, I dreamt of her mouth opening far too wide, her jaw unhinging like a snake. Black smoke poured out, and from it, that same language hissed like a warning I wasn't built to understand. When I woke up, there was a voice message on my phone, from a number listed only as unknown. I played it once. It was the exact same phrase she'd spoken during our session. That guttural, inhuman croak. Except this time it was followed by a second voice, mine, screaming. I deleted the message immediately, but the sound stayed in my ears, like it had soaked into my memory. At the next session, I confronted her. I walked in and said, "What did you say to me last time?" She didn't blink. "You mean during our dream analysis?" "No, when your eyes went weird, when you spoke in that thing's voice." She adjusted her glasses and said, "Sometimes the mind projects fear onto authority figures. It's common in cases of suppressed guilt." I was shaking now. "You said you weren't supposed to hear that. Why?" She paused. Her smile dropped. Then in perfect calm she said, "Because it wasn't meant for you. It was meant for what's underneath you." I stood up to leave. Her voice dropped lower than I thought physically possible and rumbled, "It's listening now." I ran out the door into my car. I didn't go back. I tried to report her. The office was real, but when I returned a few days later, there was a "for lease" sign in the window. The receptionist I'd seen each week? No trace. The clinic website? Gone. Dr. Miranda Holtz never held a valid therapist's license in the state. I tried to forget about it, but every so often, in the silence before I fall asleep, I hear her voice again, speaking that ancient, waterlogged phrase. And now I can understand it, and it's calling something back. He smiled with teeth that didn't match his gums, and asked if my skin ever itched from the inside out. It was just after 11 p.m., and I had missed the last express train home. The local bus stop near my job was always sketchy at night, tucked under a flickering street lamp on a half-abandoned stretch of road lined with silent warehouses. I wasn't alone. A man was already sitting on the bench, mid-30s, clean-cut, in a wrinkled button-up and slacks. He was humming something under his breath. It was tuneless, repetitive, like a child trying to remember a song they didn't understand. I gave a polite nod and sat a few feet away, scrolling my phone to avoid eye contact. But I could feel him watching me. Not in a creepy predator way at first, just curious. He leaned forward after a minute. "You from around here?" I nodded. "Yeah, you." "Not really," he said, smiling. "Still getting used to the temperature." It was an odd answer, but I laughed politely. He kept talking. "Your shell looks comfortable. Fitted well. Did they stretch it before insertion?" "What?" He chuckled as if I'd made a joke. "I just meant it looks lived in. Natural." I started to shift on the bench, inching away without making it obvious. That's when I really looked at him. At first glance he seemed normal, but there was something off about the way his face moved, like it was just slightly too tight. When he blinked, I noticed faint seams around his eyes. Not wrinkles, not scars, stitches. The humming started again. This time I recognized the tune. It was Ring Around the Rosie. Off-key. Slowed down. He scratched at his forearm absently, and the motion pulled the skin on his hand in a way that shouldn't have happened. It wrinkled like old latex stretched too thin. "You know," he said, voice lower now, "most people never even realize they're inside one." "Inside what?" "The shell." His grin stretched too wide. "The flesh suit. Yours is holding up nicely. Minimal tearing. Good adhesion." I stood up. "Hey man, I'm just trying to get home." He nodded. "Of course. We all are, eventually." Then, still seated, he said, "Do yours ever scream when you sleep?" "Mine did the first few weeks." That's when I backed away. He rose too, mechanically, like something puppeteering a man who hadn't quite memorized how to move yet. I started walking fast down the street. No bus was coming. Screw the wait. I could call a rideshare from the gas station a few blocks away. Behind me, I heard the shuffle of footsteps. Not running, gliding. Rubber soles dragging in slow pursuit. Then he spoke again, much closer than I expected. "Sometimes I wonder what the original ones felt when we climbed in. Do you remember yours?" I turned around. He wasn't there. I spun a full circle. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. Just the wind. And that flickering street lamp buzzing like it was about to blow. I ran. The gas station was closed, lights dead inside. But I hid behind the ice machine and pulled out my phone. No signal. No service. Not even SOS mode. I stayed there for 10 minutes, maybe longer, until I heard a vehicle approaching. A city bus, finally. I flagged it down and practically dove inside. The driver looked half asleep, didn't say a word. I didn't care. I sat near the back, panting, watching the empty street vanish behind us through the fogged-up windows. Only when we passed the bus stop again did I look out one last time. He was back on the bench, sitting still, staring directly at me. This time, he wasn't wearing the face I'd seen before. It was mine. Every night at 2:11 a.m., the van's engine would start, without headlights, just long enough for the cameras to click once. Then silence. It started 2 weeks after I quit my job. I'd been working from home, sleeping in, enjoying my downtime, until I noticed the white van. No logos, no plates, tinted front window. Parked across the street from my house, half blocking my neighbor's driveway. Always in the same spot. Always facing my living room window. At first, I thought it was just some contractor or delivery driver who liked the shade. But it never moved during the day. It just sat there. I didn't see anyone get in. I didn't see anyone get out. And I never saw the doors open. One night I stayed up reading on the couch. At exactly 2:11 a.m., the van's engine started. No headlights, no taillights, just a low mechanical hum that lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then a soft click, like a camera shutter. Then silence. It did the same thing the next night, and the one after that. After 5 nights, I got up the nerve to walk outside and pretend to smoke just to see if anyone was inside. As soon as I opened the front door, the van's engine cut off. It didn't drive away, just waited. That's when I started recording it. I set up a small trail cam behind my curtains, pointed directly at the windshield. I wanted proof for the police, or at least to show my friends I wasn't losing it. The footage was worse than I expected. Every single night at the exact same time, the van's engine would kick on, but there was no one behind the wheel. Not in any of the frames. I cranked the brightness. I slowed it down frame by frame. Nothing. Just the silhouette of something hunched low in the back of the van. A shape that didn't move, didn't shift, but somehow changed subtly between nights. Sometimes it was bulkier, sometimes taller. One night, it had a hand pressed against the rear window, long fingers that bent the wrong way. I called the non-emergency line, filed a report. A patrol car drove by during the day, said they'd check it out. The next morning there was no van, but that night it came back. Same spot, same engine hum, same single click at 2:11. Only this time, my porch light blew out as soon as I opened the door. I could feel it watching me. The tension became unbearable. I decided to confront it. Around midnight, I grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar and marched across the street. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear the wind. As I reached the van, I noticed something strange. There was a symbol scratched into the side panel. Not a logo, not graffiti. A circle with 3 vertical lines running through it, almost like tally marks, but wrong somehow. Jagged, uneven. I knocked on the rear door. No response. I knocked again, harder. The door creaked open on its own, just a few inches. It smelled like copper and mildew inside, like wet electronics and old blood. I raised my flashlight and aimed it through the crack. What I saw wasn't human. It was pale gray, hairless, hunched like a spider wearing human skin. Its head was too smooth, with no ears or nose, just a long slit of a mouth and 2 massive black eyes that absorbed the light without reflecting anything back. And it was staring at me. Not surprised, not afraid, patient. Its arm twitched, an arm with too many joints, and slowly reached toward the door handle, not to pull it shut, but to invite me in. That's when I ran. I didn't stop until I was locked inside my house. Every curtain closed, every light on. The van didn't follow. But the next night it was parked 1 house closer. And the night after that, right in my driveway. I haven't slept. I unplugged every camera, tossed my phone, turned off Wi-Fi, anything I thought it could use. Still, at exactly 2:11 a.m., I hear the engine hum. Then a click, like it's waiting for me to open the door again. Tonight, I think it will. He stared at his monitor for 8 hours straight. No typing, no blinking, just standing perfectly still like he was waiting for something to happen behind him. I worked the night shift in a mid-sized tech company's IT department. It's usually dead quiet, just the hum of the server room and the distant groan of the elevator cables echoing through the halls. A skeleton crew rotates nights, but for the last 5 months, I've shared the shift with one guy, Thomas. He was odd, polite but distant, never spoke unless spoken to, wore the same beige button-up every single night. He brought no food, no coffee, never used the bathroom. Just showed up, sat at his desk, and stared at his screen. Sometimes he didn't even touch the keyboard. At first, I chalked it up to social anxiety or burnout. This job does that to people. But what really unsettled me was that I never once saw him blink. Not during entire conversations. Not during long stretches of silence. I even tried subtle things, dropping my keys suddenly, flashing my phone's flashlight at his face when pretending to check my camera app. Nothing. His eyes didn't flinch. Last week, I stayed a bit later than usual after my shift ended. I had to dig into the security camera archives to find a network access issue, and while skimming through the overnight footage, I got curious and pulled up a few clips of our office's main room from the last few nights. That's when I saw it. Thomas wasn't sitting. He was standing at his desk, unmoving, staring forward for 8 hours straight, from clock in to clock out. His arms were at his sides, his posture stiff, like a mannequin propped upright. The timestamp ticked forward, and he didn't adjust his weight, scratch his face, nothing. It was like watching a paused video, except I could see the lights flicker and the clock hands move behind him. I checked other days. Same thing. Always standing. Always staring. I even found a feed from 2 weeks ago where I passed behind him on my way to the break room. In the footage, he didn't acknowledge me. But the moment I left frame, his head turned toward the hallway I had just entered. Just his head. Slow. Mechanical. Then, a second later, back to position. I was shaking now. This wasn't just weird, it was wrong. I switched to the live feed, desperate to see if he was still there. He was. Standing at his desk. Same beige shirt. Same eyes wide open, locked on the monitor. But now, the camera feed started glitching. Tiny skips like digital static. Every time the image returned, Thomas was closer. Half a step at a time. At first, I thought it was a rendering issue. Then, in one frame, his head was turned and he was staring directly into the camera. Into me. I slammed my laptop shut and ran back to the office floor. It was empty. No Thomas. No sign he'd even been there that night. His desk chair was pushed in. His screen was off. I checked the time, 3:03 a.m. I didn't hear him leave. But later that morning, I got a Slack message from his account. Hey, can you cover for me next week? No profile picture. Just the message. I hovered my mouse over it and watched it start typing again before my eyes. I blink when no one's looking. I deleted the message. I went to HR, but they told me no one named Thomas was in the system. No employee file. No clock-in logs. Nothing. But he still shows up every night. And now, when I check the cameras, there are two of him. One at the desk. One staring at the elevator. Both waiting.